Welcome to the first ever episode of the Rip City Community Pregame Show. I am Tara Bowen-Biggs here with Dillon Sage, and we're going to give you a quick roundup of what you need to know going into today's game. So let's go ahead and get started. The Blazers are facing off tonight against the Timberwolves at 5 p.m. Pacific. It's the first night of a back-to-back in Minnesota. That's kind of a weird quirk of the schedule. Sage, do you want to start us off with the injury reports?
So Zach Collins, Yusuf Nurkic, CJ McCollum, and Harry Giles are all out for the Blazers. And then for the Timberwolves, Jared Culver is doubtful with a toe sprain. D'Angelo Russell is out with his knee injury. Jordan McLaughlin is out for COVID safety protocols, and Malik Beasley is out for being dumb.
So even though it's after All-Star break and we were thinking that maybe we'd see Collins or McCollum and Nurkic right after that, we have not seen them yet. So we're expecting the Blazers lineup is going to stay the same. And it's Cantor, Robert Covington, Derek Jones Jr., Gary Trent Jr., Damian Lillard. This is going to be the 10th time the Blazers are using that lineup this season. Well, let's turn and look to the Timberwolves. There was pretty good list of injuries there, but like how much does that change the lineup really that they're used to using?
You know, because of the new coach and Carl Anthony Towns only playing 552 minutes this year, you don't really know what the Minnesota Timberwolves want to do. And especially since they brought in that new coach, Chris Finch, Carl Anthony Towns has played 192 minutes with the new coach. So it's hard to really know what they're going to do in this game because it's like the Minnesota Timberwolves don't know what they're doing. It's a brand new coach, it's a brand new philosophy, so it's gonna be an adventure either way for this team. And the things that I do know is they're awful defensively and really bad at rebounding. I know that they are a really good 3-point shooting defending team, but I think the reason they're so good at defending the three is the paint is wide open every single time. They're the second worst team at defending the paint. So I think the Blazers need to attack early and often from the paint to really take advantage of the lack of defenders on this Minnesota Timberwolves team.
Well, let's talk about where they are right now. They do hold the worst record in the league right now at
Mm-hmm.
8-29. They are on a one-game winning streak,
Yeah,
and that one win was against your New Orleans Pelicans. So what happened in that game? How did Minnesota get that win?
I think that the Pelicans tried to do a new phase of their offense where Brandon Ingram was more of a focal point, and he decided to take some bad shots, and then some bench players and some players you don't really know had ceiling games, and it was kind of over after that with the Pelicans. But you
So
know, the,
not so much a function of the Timberwolves putting it all together, possibly because the Pelicans were trying something new and it wasn't really working.
yeah, and brand new team. I would imagine a brand new coach, so the roster might be motivated to show how talented they really are. New players are getting opportunities that they didn't in the past, so it was a brand new part of the season for that team, and New Orleans kind of came out flat.
Well, let's look at the starting lineup. From what I seen, the most likely lineup. We're recording this, if 3 or 4 hours before the game. Things can change. Most likely, they've got Carl Anthony Towns, Jared Vanderbilt, former Blazer popular Jake Layman, Anthony Edwards, and Ricky Rubio, all starting for the Timberwolves. Now, despite their record, they do have some good players. And obviously, that starts with Carl Anthony Towns. So let's talk about what makes Carl Anthony Towns so dangerous and how are the Blazers, and in particular Ennis Cantor, going to deal with him?
That's a kind of a difficult proposition for Ennis because Carl Anthony Towns is one of the best big man shooters ever. So he's going to draw Ennis out of the paint and defensively. So putting Ennis on that island versus Carl Anthony Towns could be really dangerous for us. That's why people are betting the over on points for Carl Anthony Towns. Carl Anthony Towns is the most popular center on all DFS sites. He's going to produce. I think the key is to not let the other people produce and kind of just focus on Carl Anthony Towns wrecking us because he has the capabilities to do so. I mean, he's one of the most talented bigs in the league. So it's not about stopping him, it's trying to contain him. And if he decides to post up Ennis, I feel great about it. It's just when he decides he wants to be a sharpshooter, it kind of makes our defense look a little bad, worse than it is actually, because we are bad. It just makes it potentially worse.
Oh man, that's a bleak scenario. Well, do you think the Blazers might try, Robert Covington against him? Do you think being slightly
Potentially.
more mobile, even though he's smaller?
But I think Robert Covington's always willing to wrestle somebody in the paint. I think he enjoys it. Like you saw him defend Joel Embiid, and he would just pull the chair on him every chance he could, and it made JoJo have to reestablish post position, and that takes time. So maybe a good way of defending Karl Anthony Towns is putting Robert Covington on him, and then putting Ennis, who you need, on one of the wing shooters that don't really they if they hit their ceiling, they hit their ceiling, but it's a bet you're willing to take.
Yeah. Who's going to chase Jake Layman around too? Hadn't even really thought about that. Well, they, of course, the Timberwolves also have the number one draft pick, Anthony Edwards. So, what do you like about what you've seen from him this year? And what do you think the Blazers are going to do to plan for him?
I think with Jordan McLaughlin out, who was the backup point guard, Anthony Edwards has been put in that backup point guard role. So anytime that Ricky Rubio isn't on the court, Anthony Edwards was the main ball handler. So giving somebody with a big usage rate and who is very talented, blue chip first overall pick, more playmaking responsibilities, it's gonna be a big factor in this game today. I would probably put DJJ or Gary Trent, who probably going to be hyped for this game, on him, and just try and make his life miserable. Like we've seen DJJ and Gary guard full court. I think you want to put pressure on him. You can't just let him dictate the game and go into driving lanes, because when he drives, it's special. You've seen all the highlights. You've seen his top shots. Like it was a challenge reward for a reason. He can dunk. So having someone on him so he can be forced into taking bad shots and not driving, I think is a big key. But he is going to be the backup point guard, so he is going to have a lot of usage and will dictate the game a lot.
Yeah, I see some of Derek Jones Jr. He has just a little bit more experience than Gary Trent Jr. Gary Trent Jr. does defense with all his heart, and Derek Jones Jr. does it with all his heart and just a little dash of experience that sometimes can
Yeah.
maybe rattle Anthony Edwards a little bit. Well, how do you think the how do you think the Timberwolves are going to defend Lillard? And if they're going to double team him, who do you think is going to be on him?
I mean, with how bad they have been this season, I'm sure that they can try and double Dame, but I think Dame is just going to go past them and get to the rim relatively easy. It's you know we're going to look at the long term, what they've produced this year. They're really bad defensively, and I think we just have to attack that rim relentlessly. Good things happen when you drive the ball. So Dame, Rocco, I think Gary's gonna get some drives of the game in the game. And let's let our dunk contest winner get some dunks. I think driving to the rim, dunking it, and I know you're kind of anti-dunking, but I want it. I want to see us dribble penetrate and force the Minnesota Timberwolves to react to that. And then we can let the shooting that we're so dedicated to happen off of dribble penetration and the defense reacting to that. I think that's where we just get this win easy, is if we can just drive to the rack, get points, and force the Timberwolves to react.
Well, I could easily become a fan of dunks again as soon as the Blazers start dunking. It just happens to be that that's not their thing. So it's like I finally decided I'm not going to spend all my time hoping for a dunk when that's just not the game that they play.
Mm-hmm.
However, I am very open to them becoming a dunking team and me becoming a big dunk fan again.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up rebounding earlier, and I've replaced dunks with rebounds as my favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do you think the rebounding situation shapes up for between these two teams?
Well, the Timberwolves are the second worst rebounding team in the league. So Ennis is going to have to be big today because he's our only real legit rebounder on the team. I know Robert Covington, because he plays a five, is getting more rebounds now, but it's really our rebounding success is always based on Ennis Cantor. And that's why I went the over on a player prop of 12 rebounds in a game for Ennis Cantor. I think he could get that in a half if he really wanted to. That is a player prop that I'm willing to just hammer and feel really good about the potential of Ennis Cantor getting all the rebounds he wants. There isn't anybody on that team that's going to stop him from getting the rebound if he really wants it.
Mhm. Well, we talked about this a little bit earlier too. The Blazers are living and dying by the three this year. At least that's how it feels. Timberwolves hold their opponents to a league low 30.8 3-point attempts per game. And do you think this is going to be an issue for the Blazers, or do you think it sounds like you were thinking that that just means the Blazers are going to have more opportunities to take it right to the rack?
Yeah, like if you look at defense versus position, they're a good defensive team, but if you look at their team defense, they're really bad. So I think it's all about driving to the paint and forcing them to react to this game. And one thing that I was watching, because I knew we were going to do this relatively soon, Coach Finch said that Karl Anthony Towns and Ja Reed are going to potentially play more minutes together, and they did against the Pelicans. So there's a good chance that the Timberwolves can go with a jumbo too big lineup against us, and that could be kind of scary since we have one and a half big men on this team currently.
Yeah, that sounds a little scary.
Yeah, because Reed has been really good without Karl Anthony Towns. So if those two can work together and dominate the boards potentially, or just be two big players against us, that could be a very deadly lineup. Just like 10 minutes of two big men dominating the boards.
So it sounds like your theory is that the Timberwolves are, are holding their opponents to less threes simply because it's easier to
Yeah.
get to the paint. So it's not necessarily that they're doing anything particularly
Mm,
clever
mm,
to keep people from shooting threes.
yep.
So it could continue to be a perfectly great night from three for Damian.
I
Or
expect us to win both games relatively easy because let's look at it. They're the worst team in the West. They need to have a top three pick to keep this pick because they traded their future first round pick in a very loaded draft to the Minnesota oh no, to the Golden State Warriors for D'Angelo Russell. So what is the key? Why would they want to win this game? It's kind of like, okay, this is where we get to see what Jaden Noel and Jake Layman can do in big minutes. So it's the time in the year where it's like, okay, we're not really doing anything. Let's do player development.
Mhm. Well,
Like
speaking of, oh, go ahead.
Carl Anthony Towns might not play the next game, back to back, recovering from COVID. Like I don't think this team's really ready to win. They're not in the position to win. They have suspensions, injuries, COVID. Maybe they give the big man some more rest in the next game.
Well, speaking of former Blazer great Jake Layman, there's actually two former Blazers on the roster right now, Jake Layman and fan favorite Ed Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Jake's been with them for a couple of years, and lately he has been getting more playing time. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it exactly coincides with the new coach or not, but he's been scoring in double figures for the last few games, and he's even shooting a career high 34.6% from three right now. So it should be fun to tune in and see what Jake is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Ed, however, is not getting minutes. He is not playing, and I don't think it's because of injuries. He just doesn't seem to fit in there.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help it. I want Ed to come back to Portland.
I would love it.
Think they could make use of a guy like him? I think they could.
Well, but then it
He's
comes to the
tall.
who is Ed gonna take Ennis's minutes when Yusuf comes back? It's I would love to have him. I think he has a great role in the league as a rebounder, as a guy like Ennis who desires and needs every potential rebound. But I don't know if Ed Davis and Ennis could play together since both of them are so paint dependent. So it would cause bad spacing. But I would love to see him on a team where he can get real minutes. I think that they wanted to give Jared Vanderbilt some extra time because he's shown the ability to be a game changer defensively and with his effort. So unfortunately for Ed, he's kind of priced himself out of the team because they want to go with the youth movement and
Mhm.
he's an older gentleman.
And he is a gentleman. Well, hopefully we'll see him on the bench, and we'll be able to at least look upon him fondly. So the one Blazer I'm particularly excited to watch tonight is Apple Valley's finest, Gary Trent Jr. I think this return home for a couple of games is going to give him some good energy, especially since I don't know, would you characterize that he's in just a little bit of a shooting slump? I don't think it's a massive slump, but it feels like he's been struggling, at least from outside the last few games.
Yeah, he has been struggling a little bit, but when we need someone to be that secondary shooter, I'm happy when he's confident enough to just launch from three when he's open, when he feels like it's a good shot. So it may be rimming out, it might be not as pure as we're used to, but I don't think of this as a real slump. But
Mm, yeah. Well, and I have noticed, when I was prepping for this, I noticed that the last 5 games he's gotten to the free throw line at least once every game.
that's big, and
That's huge.
he's driven it a few more times per game too, which on this YouTube show, it's going to be a big thing. Drives per game is really important for our offense. So when he goes to the line and drives more, it's always a good thing for us.
Well, any of the other Blazers that you're going to have your eye on tonight, seeing what they're going to be doing?
So Ennis Cantor, of course, because I have the prop bet. Damian Lillard's on about 35% of my FanDuel lineups, and Gary Trent's on quite a bit as well. And I think that if you want to do another bet, Carmelo Anthony over 15 and a half points seems pretty good because of how bad the Timberwolves are at defense. I feel like that's pretty safe. So my eyes on those few players.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about Carmelo. I mean, at the beginning of the season, I was on board with Carmelo coming off the bench because I thought it would be fun to watch him feast on second units.
Mm,
And this feels like one of those games where he could
absolutely.
eat.
Yeah, who's gonna stop him? Who's vet enough to stop him? Because he has all of his moves that he's used for decades. Like, I, he's gonna draw so many fouls by excited players jumping at every one of his pump fakes.
Yeah. On the other hand, sometimes I feel like Melo plays better under pressure,
Mhm.
and this might not be as high of a pressure of a game.
But I think he's gonna like playing with his food, and he's gonna get at least 16 points. Beat that player prop.
All right. Well, we covered a lot in just a few minutes, Sage. I'm very proud of us. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we sign off?
No, I'm good. I'm really happy that we were able to do this and it wasn't as long-winded as we were afraid it was going to be, but I think we got a lot of information out there and you know, for people that are interested in this game and injuries are a huge factor. Keep an eye out on all of the news. There's going to be a 3:30 injury report, so some of the things that we said may change because of, you know, we're living in a COVID era and some things can change very fast.
Right on. Yeah, so we're going to put this episode out. We're going to share it mostly with our friends. So this is something that we're hoping to do more of in the future. We thought that there's a place out there for quick pregame analysis that you can watch and then get on with your life before the game starts. So yeah, anybody who has comments, wants to give us positive feedback. Again, we're giving this to our friends. Constructive criticism and positive feedback. If it's not positive, I'll make Sage look at it because I can't handle that. But thank you for everybody who tuned in to listen. Thank you, Sage, for jumping on because this was very last minute. I appreciate it. And the
Mhm.
sun is out. So let's wrap it up and we'll go out and have some fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.